Jesus is one of the most recognizable figures in history. In fact, over 2 billion people worship him today. Well, did you know that although he's commonly associated with Christianity, Christ is actually an integral part to several other religions? So, let's talk about it. So who is Jesus? You probably already know who Jesus is. Well, the Christian concept anyway. He is the human incarnation of God who was born to the Virgin Mary, and after many years of preaching God's word, he was crucified and he died for all of mankind's sin. Then he rose from the dead with the promise that he will return in the end days to bring salvation. I think most people know this stuff since a large majority of the world celebrate Easter and Christmas. So was Jesus actually real? Yeah, most likely. Although we don't have any of his remains, there are sources that suggest that he was a real person. And this is outside the Bible. Jewish scholars wrote about him, and there are hundreds of books that were excluded from the Bible that mention him. Even the four Gospels of Mark, Luke, John and Matthew can somewhat be seen as a historical source. Although yes, they may be biased, if we excluded all biased pieces of historical writing, we wouldn't know much about the past at all. Like, did you know that almost all of the information we have on the Vikings come from the Christians who hated them? This topic does deserve its own video, but to make a long story short, did Jesus exist? Yes. But was he the Son of God and did he perform miracles? Well, that's a matter of faith. Jesus in Judaism. Even though Jesus was a Jew, he took part in Jewish traditions like Passover, and he taught the Jewish law. The view of Jesus himself within modern day Judaism is very mixed. One thing all Jews agree on is that Jesus was not the Messiah or the Son of God. They're still waiting for that. Jews and Christians have basically the same concept of the Messiah. However, Jews don't believe that Jesus fulfilled the prophecy. One of the biggest prophecies was that once the Messiah arrives, there will be world peace. And yeah, we're clearly not there yet. Though with Jesus presumably making a second coming, Christians believe it will happen then. So I mentioned that there are mixed views on Judaism, right? Well, for some Jews, the name alone is nearly synonymous with pogroms, crusades, inquisitions, and centuries of Christian anti-Semitism. Other Jews have come to regard him as a Jewish teacher. This does not mean, however, that they believe as Christians do, that he was raised from the dead or was the Messiah. Like I said before, one of the main reasons why we know Jesus most likely existed was because of the many writings done about him that were done by Jewish people, especially in the 1st century BC. So you could say that they have always somewhat known about his existence. At the end of the day, it really depends on the person. I spoke to a rabbi and he told me that he believes that Jesus was a Jewish teacher whose words were misinterpreted wrongly. So whenever you see someone compare Christianity to Islam, most of the time they run straight to Muhammad and Jesus. The thing is, this comparison doesn't make any sense, because if you've actually read the Quran, like I have, you would understand that Jesus is incredibly important to Muslims. Like, you can't even be a Muslim if you don't believe in Jesus. A fairer comparison would be Apostle Paul and Muhammad, but that's for another time. So in Arabic, he is known as Isa. And like in the Bible, he was born to the Virgin Maryam, also known as Mary. She was also visited by angel Jibril or Gabriel, and she was told that God would make her pregnant without the need of a man. One of the things I find most interesting about Jesus in Islam is that he performed a miracle as a newborn. The story goes that once Mary had Jesus, there was a lot of controversy. I mean, at this current time period, having a child without a husband was frowned upon, and of course, no one will believe a person that says they were pregnant without intercourse. So Jesus actually spoke in the cradle, and he confirmed that he was sent by God as a prophet. If you were wondering where Joseph was in the story, well, he was never Mary's spouse in Islam. So like the Jesus in the Bible, he was granted from God the power to manifest some exceptional miracles. For example, he would create out of clay a figure of a bird, then breathe into it and it would become a real bird. Or he would cure a person born blind who had no other way to be cured. He would cure lepers, He also brought the dead back to life, and he had 12 disciples. Jesus is also the Messiah in Islam, and like in the Bible, he will return in the end times to bring salvation to mankind, and he will lead people away from the Dajjal or Antichrist. So a lot of you may be wondering what the actual difference is between the Christian and Islamic Jesus. Well, there's two main ones. In Islam, Jesus, although important, and the Messiah is only a human and prophet, thus meaning he is a servant of God, no more, no less. This differs greatly from Christianity, which teaches that Jesus is an incarnation of God, his son and part of the Holy Trinity. Christians believe that God and Jesus are one in the same, so praying to Jesus is the same as praying to God. This is a no-go in Islam. The Trinity doesn't exist to them. Saying that God can have a son will be applying human qualities to God, so this is strictly forbidden. Muslims also believe that Jesus was not crucified. Although they believe a crucifixion did happen, it was not to Jesus. So unlike the Bible where Jesus was persecuted for saying he was the Son of God, the Islamic Jesus was hunted down mainly because of the miracles he performed. I guess the non-believers and Jews thought it was witchcraft. But at the last minute, God took Jesus to heaven and he made someone else to look like him. That was the person who was crucified. So this kind of explains how Jesus can return, because he's not dead, but even then, God can do anything, right? The last thing I want to point out is that according to Islam, Jesus wrote a book called the Injil, which is the Islamic Gospel, and the precursor to the Quran. Jesus in Buddhism. Many Buddhists view Jesus as an enlightened man who was also a teacher. The current Dalai Lama, who is the spiritual leader of all Buddhists, often describes Jesus as a holy man and includes Jesus in his list of such important people. In fact, the Dalai Lama does not typically elevate Buddha to a greater status than Jesus when discussing the two figures. The Dalai Lama met frequently with the Pope in the early part of the 21st century and showed great respect for the teaching and person of Jesus Christ. Okay, so this is more of a theory than a belief, but I do think it's interesting to point out. So according to some theorists, during Jesus' lost years, he went to Asia to learn about Buddhism. The lost years are referred to the 18 years of Christ's life that were absent from the Bible. The book literally goes from his birth to when he's 12, preaching in the temple, time skip, and then he's 30. In 1887, a document called The Life of Saint Isa was found, and it documented Jesus' life throughout the lost 18 years. According to the scrolls, Jesus abandoned Jerusalem at the age of 13 and set out towards Sindh, which is modern-day Pakistan, intending to improve and perfect himself in the divine understanding and to study in the laws of Great Buddha. He crossed Punjab and reached Puri Jana, where he studied the Vedas under Brahmin priests. He spent 6 years in Puri and Rangith near Nalanda, the ancient seat of Hindu learning. Then he went to the Himalayas and spent time in the Tibetan monasteries studying Buddhism, and through Persia returned to Jerusalem at the age of 29. People have essentially linked the saying of Buddha to Jesus Christ because both talk about peace, pacifism, and so on. I'll paste some comparisons below. Since Buddha lived 600 years before Christ, some people actually think he was a direct inspiration. People have been saying Christ is a copy and paste of Horus, Serapis, and Mitra for years, without much evidence. In this case, I just think both Jesus and Buddha wanted to spread peace. There's only so many ways you can spread that message, in my opinion. But yeah, Buddhists believe in Jesus, just that he was not God, because they don't believe in God. Jesus in Hinduism. Like Christianity, there are several sects or denominations of Hinduism. In some of these beliefs, Jesus or Ishu is a human avatar of the deity Vishnu, which is one of the most important gods in Hinduism. You see, Hindus believe that when the world needs guidance, Vishnu will come as another form or avatar to lead and teach people. Other avatars of Vishnu include Buddha, Rama, and Krishna. I'm sure you may have heard of some of these. Some Hindus also believe that Jesus was an enlightened one, so he is someone that all people should attain to be like. But like I said, there are many denominations of Hinduism, even more than Christianity, so it's really going to depend on each person. I couldn't possibly talk about everything here. So the Baha'i faith is a relatively new religion. It was established in the 19th century. They essentially believe in all major religious figures like Adam, Muhammad, Krishna, Buddha, and Jesus. They are all messengers and manifestations of God's word. So their belief in Jesus is basically Hinduism, Christianity, and Islam combined. He was a divine prophet who was an incarnation of God's message. I want to point out that in some variations of the Ifa religion, like Santeria, Umbanda, Jesus is linked with the Orisha or Batala. This is mainly due to colonization. Their ancestors would fuse Catholicism with their traditional beliefs in order to please their masters, but also still keep to their faith. Obatala can be seen as an expression of Olorun, so him being linked to Jesus makes a lot of sense. Make sure to check out my video about him and it will be linked at the top so you can kind of understand more. And lastly, I'll end with two Christian denominations. Jehovah's Witnesses believe that Jesus is actually Michael the Archangel, and Mormons believe he is a physical human who cannot die, and he is basically an example of what humans should be like. According to them, humans can actually become divine like Jesus, meaning that we can essentially become gods. So it's safe to say that Jesus Christ is a very universal figure. Whether he's seen as God or not, most people on this earth believe he existed in one way or form. Anyways, I hope you learned something new. Please let me know if I missed anything out, because I'm still learning too. Yeah, have a great day. Goodbye.